581,000 businesses were started last year in the UK. That's 1,592 that started every single day. As business owners, how are you going to compete with that? As I was introduced, my name is Nick Watts and I'm from Depict Creative, and we are the brand Storytellers. The stories are what define us as individuals. They give us background, they give us meaning. And a brand story, just like any other story, is made up of words, images, in modern times now video more and more. And they all bring in emotion and they all make us feel something. And today what I want to do is give you an insight into the world of brand storytelling. And whilst I'm doing this, I want you to ask yourself a question. And that question is, what is my story? Doesn't necessarily need to be an answer, but just think on, and when we get to the end of this, there's a little bit of a reason. Can anybody tell me what a brand is? What does brand mean? Does anybody know? Anybody want to take a guess? Like a, yeah. Yeah. So, a brand, it's an identity that encompasses your business with the people you engage with. Now, I could list a host of identities here at the moment off the top of my head. Apple, for one, McDonald's, EasyJet, BMW, Virgin, stuff. Now, when you say these names, or you hear these names, you have an immediate perception of what that brand is about, what it means to you. And whilst you might get that same flash, it's quite generic in its form, but everybody will perceive something differently because they all interact and engage with it differently. So, for example, when I said Virgin, who saw the Virgin logo in their mind? Who saw this guy? Yeah. So, isn't that weird? To one person, it's lipstick red, it's bold, it's bright, it's striking, but to another person, it's this guy. So, how powerful would that be if somebody could look at you and ultimately see this universe of your brand surround you because you are so passionate about it? That would be good, right? That would be beautiful. Yeah. However, I know what you're probably thinking. He's got billions to spend on advertising. It's no problem for him to drop 10 grand on an advertising campaign. He could advertise on the television. In some cases, he is the television if you've got Virgin broadband and you do. So what about those that don't have hundreds of thousands and millions to spend on advertising? How do they build up a good brand? When I was younger, there was a large cluster of pubs around the area, which was lucky for me. And I would be in the pub on a Friday night, and in would walk the fishman. Did anybody else have a fishman that would come to the pub when they were younger? So he'd be there in his overalls, and he's got his tray of seafood, cockles, mussels, crab sticks, that type of thing. And he would go to every pub twice of an evening. And there was about 5, 6, 7 pubs in this area, 2 mile radius. And he would do that day in, day out, come rain or shine. And he did it for about 30 years. And what he built up was consistency within his brand. He probably didn't know it at the time, because he was just a simple fishmonger, tradesman trying to go about and make a business. And it was only when he didn't turn up on the odd occasion, perhaps through illness, that you really noticed that he wasn't there. I don't like seafood, but on the occasion when I was in the pub, and you get to that point, you think, where's the fishman? He's not there. So to have consistency and repetition of doing something all the time, that built up his brand, because when people realised he wasn't there, they missed him. And Building on consistency is just one of the elements within a good brand story that will help you succeed amongst those 581,000 people that will have started businesses this year. So, whilst we've looked at how immediate brand identity affects our perceptions and how we think of that brand, can anybody tell me what branding means as opposed to
using brand everywhere?
Yeah, there's loads of meanings for what branding is. I don't think anybody's actually defined it correctly because it's so broad. But what I like to think of branding is brand storytelling. It's about authentic marketing. It's telling stories that affect people's perceptions and make them feel a certain way. Stories have been around since the dawn of time almost, since the first human being set foot on the planet. Like cavemen, we would tell stories on rock and stone. So, a cave painting like this, for example, you see stickmen drawn in blood or ink or whatever, I don't know what it is, but is it just a doodle, or could it have been an instruction manual for future generations on how to gather food or defend themselves from herds and beasts of all manners? Aborigines would tell ceremonial stories, weddings, rites of passage, stories, so they follow us and they give us meaning, and they'll continue to do so. So, how can a good brand story help your business? Would you? We're back in again. So this winter just passed, Heinz did an advertising campaign on the television, and it was for tomato soup. But they weren't advertising it as a can of tomato soup, they were advertising it as a bowl of warm. Now, I don't know if you ever saw the advert, but the woman comes in, she's freezing cold, she's soaked to the skin, and she's struggling to get her coat off as she comes through the door, she's miserable. And after a few minutes, drying her hair, she sits down at the table to a nice bowl of soup. Who here can't relate to that? Because I think everybody in the room has probably felt some type of contentment when they've got in from a cold winter's day and they've sat down to a nice bowl of soup. How does it actually feel? Yeah, comfortable. It makes you feel content and you feel relaxed again. So by telling a story of how one woman goes from not buying a bowl of soup but having a bowl of warmth, they're changing our mindset into what a can of soup actually is. So with every new customer or potential customer that we come into contact with, we like to discuss the elements of a good brand story. And here you can see from this infographic, there's a few points here that if you follow them closely, you will start to be able to form a good story that can talk and engage your audience. So just going through the points we've got. Something to say, tone of voice, consistency, image, people, and engagement. So when I started this business, I wanted to tell people that I am a brand storyteller. That's what I do. I tell people stories. So in your case, whether you're a new business or you're existing, you've been going for years, it doesn't matter. What is the single most important thing you want to say to your audience? It might be that you're a tyre fitter. You want to say, we will fit the tyres fastest and we do it fastest anywhere in the West Midlands. You might say if you're an exporter that we are the only company in the UK that can export certain goods to a particular country. You might be the fastest sheep shearer in the country, but whatever it is that you want to say, make sure that you say it all the time. So, going back to myself, I am the brand storyteller, and I use it as my strapline everywhere I go. On my business cards it says, "What is your story?" Brand storytellers. So once you know what it is that you want to say to your customers and in your marketing messaging, how do you go about saying it? That's done by tone of voice. Tone of voice is how you portray that message. So if we were to get a little bit silly to illustrate the example, I'm a tailor and got a shop on Savile Row. And for sake of argument, I am categorically the best tailor on the planet. You are a discerning gentleman, got loads of money, has been to Savile Row before, knows what it's like to wear a nice suit, and you know what a business on Savile Row, how they should present themselves. How would you feel if you came into my shop and you were greeted by this? "Hi, Governor. Fancy a little cheeky suit, do you, for the weekend? Yeah? Okay, we'll have a little mooch around and I'll be with you in a few minutes." How would you feel about that?
Right, I think.
You'd probably walk out the door and go to the next door shop down the road, wouldn't you? And so that was tone of voice, but that's very verbal, it's very literal in its meaning, tone of voice. But how do you apply that to your marketing material, whether it's print or digital? So again, you've come into my shop, you were greeted by that cockney dodgy person, and you see POS, in-store graphics, and they look like this. A cheeky suit for the weekend. It doesn't really feel like a Savile Row tailor, does it? So after you've said thanks but no thanks and gone to his competitor next door, and you're greeted by a proper tailor who says, "Welcome, sir. Would you like a cup of tea whilst you browse? Is there anything I can help you with?" That you have in-store graphics and they're presented to you like this. Now, the wording tells the same story, still the same message, but the style and poles apart, the tone of voice is so different. And that's how you portray your messaging using tone of voice in marketing and print. So a weekend attire for the gentleman that knows. We've used words that would relate to the customer. They would understand it and they would appreciate it and they would react in a certain way. Compared to that. Now this guy might be the best tailor on the planet, but he's certainly going to lose every single time to this tailor. Consistency was something that I spoke about with the Fishman, and touching on that again, how can you be consistent in your branding? Change the batteries in there. Okay. So one of the things that we do for our clients is that we create brand guidelines. Brand guidelines are there as rule keepers and guardians to employees of the companies that we create them for. And to be consistent, obviously, rule number one, golden rule, do not change your logo. You might not like the logo that you currently have and may be thinking about changing it. I've seen people put the logo on one document and then on another document the next day they've used a logo from 2 years ago. It's really, really bad practice because it confuses your audience. Colours as well. If your company has a set palette of colours, don't deviate away from those. Keep them the same, keep them consistent. Typeface. If Lucy in the HR department likes Comic Sans as a typeface, and Pete in marketing likes Times New Roman, that's not justification to just change fonts nilly-willy. Don't confuse your audience. If everything's consistent, then you stand a better chance of engaging. And I've always said that if you can't be consistent, then at least be consistently bad. So, now we come on to people. There is a famous story about a guy who goes to Disneyland in Florida. And whilst he's there, he takes the opportunity to ask Mickey Mouse a question. So he says, "What's it like to work in Disneyland?" And Mickey Mouse says, "Well, Goofy's fun, but the ducks annoy me." And then the year after that, he's in Disneyland, Disneyland Paris. And he's over there and he asks the same question. He says, "What's it like to work in Disneyland?" And Mickey Mouse says, in a French accent, which I'm not going to do, "Well, Goofy's good, but the duck is annoying." So there you have Mickey in Florida and Mickey in Paris, and they're 4,500 miles away. They've never met each other, probably never even been to any company events. However, word for word perfect, they said exactly the same thing. So train your people, because they are ambassadors of your brand. They need to truly understand the story that you are telling to your customers. And if you don't have any people, then train yourself. My company, Depict Creative, is predominantly black in its branding. So whenever you see me at networking events or business meetings or presenting to you lovely people, I'll always be wearing black. Now I don't wear a suit because it's not my uniform. I'm not a banker. I don't feel that I need to dress in that corporate way. We're a graphic design agency. The last point on the infographic of the good elements of a good brand story are, we've got engagement. Engagement encompasses a lot of different things when it comes to branding, but I'm going to talk about this in terms of actual engagement, talking to people. So one of my clients, Wolverhampton, their job is to increase footfall into the city centre, help businesses by supporting them in ways that they can financially, and bring tourism into the area. And in a couple of days, they're having a big event. It's called 80s Fun Fest. So on Saturday, they're closing off Queen Square, and all of these famous faces from the 80s era are going to be there performing for free. And it's a free event that anybody can go to. So you've got Sonia, Carol Decker, and Katrina and the Waves. They're about the only people that I remember. And when we was having the meeting to discuss how we're going to create this campaign, awareness campaign, advertising, what they wanted to do was really create a buzz and an engagement, to create engagement with the audiences, specifically on Facebook for this. So they was telling me all about what's going on, how much money they've got to spend on their Facebook campaign. And of course they wanted to focus on the 80s stars because this is a big event. And it was when, towards the end of the meeting, when they said, "Oh, we want to focus on the 80s celebrities," I said, "Look, you've just told me that during the day you've got kids entertainers coming on, things going on, it's not just an evening event, and you've got Mr. Bloom." Mr. Bloom is a TV presenter from the BBC channel CBeebies. And I said to them, look, I've worked with you for a long time now. I know your target audience. I've seen interaction before on Facebook. I think you'd be making a mistake by using these 80 stars, although they're the focus of this campaign. For Facebook, I think you need to focus on Mr. Bloom, because they wanted to run a competition and they wanted to get their Facebook likes up, they wanted to increase their reach, that type of thing, because it was comparably quite poor at the moment. This was 3 weeks ago. So I said focus on Mr. Bloom because that is what your target audience will engage with. So they did, they took my advice, and thankfully it paid off, because 3 weeks ago their likes for their page was 392. Today, the event's not even here yet, massive increase. And it all came from focusing on Mr. Bloom rather than focusing on the 80 stars. Of course they focused on the 80 stars on other marketing leads, but they wanted that engagement, they wanted that buzz, and by focusing on Mr. Bloom, they got it. And that was how much they spent to get that massive increase in engagement. Now, you can't even buy a business card size advert in a magazine for that much. So for a relatively small spend, the results were a no-brainer. I mean, there's so much to think about when trying to work out what a brand story is, the elements of a story. I haven't even touched on how do you apply all of this to your printed material, marketing, brochures, website, banners, vehicle graphics. I haven't even touched on that. But I've been doing it successfully for the last 12 years in helping my clients tell their brand story. Now, every successful business will have implemented this model, and they will always implement it. They will keep doing it, they'll keep reviewing it, and they will do it until it's even more successful than it already is. Now, at the beginning of this talk, I asked you a question, which was, what is my story? So hopefully, as you've been listening to me witter on, you've been thinking about that story, and by using the elements that we've got in this, you can go forth, have to think about what it is that you want to say, how you want to say it, and really refine and define your message and make it talk. But to help you do that, we're going to offer a free brand review to everybody that we network with. And the brand review is where we will look at your brand, come in, have a chat with you, sit down, see what's working, see what needs improving, and really refine that message with you and get it to talk to its audience. And all I need you to do for that is to hold up your business card. And if anybody is interested, I'll come and collect it from you, and I'll be in touch with you by the end of the day. Thanks. Okay, so thank you very much for those business cards. I will be in touch, just to touch base with you. Yeah, if there are any questions, fire away or speak to me.